Hazel stood on the roof of her family's farmhouse, staring up at the stars that dotted the sky like tiny, glittering diamonds. It was a quiet evening on Revera, their peaceful agricultural colony, on the outskirts of the galaxy. Below, her younger brother played by the field's edge, laughing as their mother scolded him for staying out too late. Her father's voice drifted from the barn, deep and reassuring as he checked on the day's harvest. It was a life Hazel cherished, a life that felt solid, grounded in routine and love. She never imagined it could end so violently. The night was shattered by the scream of engines breaking through the atmosphere. Hazel squinted into the sky, confusion turning to dread as a massive alien warship emerged from the darkness. It hovered above the colony like a predator stalking its prey. Then, the first blast hit. The ground trembled as fire and debris erupted from the heart of the village. Hazel's home shook, and she stumbled, struggling to keep her balance as the world around her descended into chaos. Her mother's scream pierced the air, sharp and full of terror. "Hazel, get inside now!" But it was too late. As Hazel raced toward the safety of the house, the second blast hit even closer, sending shockwaves through the ground. She was thrown off her feet, landing hard on her back. Dazed, she looked up to see the house, her home, engulfed in flames. The merciless invaders, towering figures clad in sleek black armor, began descending from the ship, methodically cutting down any survivors. Her heart pounded in her chest as she crawled behind a nearby boulder, her mind barely able to comprehend the horror unfolding before her. Her brother was nowhere in sight. Her father had disappeared into the flames of the barn, and her mother was on the ground, motionless, her outstretched hand just feet away from Hazel's hiding place. Tears blurred Hazel's vision as she bit down hard, trying to stifle the sobs threatening to escape. She wanted to run to her mother, to shake her, to scream for her to get up. But the invaders were too close, their strange, guttural language filling the air as they methodically searched for survivors. For the first time in her life, Hazel felt utterly powerless. She couldn't have known how long she remained frozen behind that rock, the sounds of destruction fading into a dull roar in her mind. All she knew was that when she opened her eyes again, the invaders were gone. The air smelled of ash and smoke, and the night was silent once more, but the peace that had once defined her world had been obliterated. Suddenly, the low hum of a ship broke the silence, but this time, it wasn't the alien warship. A smaller, sleeker vessel descended rapidly, its engines whisper-quiet compared to the destruction that had come before. Hazel tensed, unsure if this was another wave of invaders or something else entirely. The ship landed and figures emerged, humanoid armed but different from the invaders. A tall man with a scarred face led the group, his sharp eyes scanning the landscape until they fell on Hazel. He knelt beside her, a strange mix of roughness and care in his movements. "You're alive," he muttered, almost in disbelief. "We thought we were too late." Hazel blinked, her voice caught in her throat. "Who are you?" "Name's Elijah," he replied, nodding to the group behind him, a rough-looking bunch who eyed the wreckage warily. "We're mercenaries. Saw the attack from orbit and figured we'd check for survivors." He paused, glancing at the smoldering ruins of her home. "Looks like you're the only one left." The words hit her like a physical blow, and Hazel felt something inside her shatter. Her family gone, her world destroyed. And she was nothing now. Nothing but a shell of the girl she had been just hours before. Elijah hesitated before placing a hand on her shoulder, his grip firm but not unkind. "I know this won't mean much right now, but we can get you out of here. The aliens won't stop with just this planet. They'll keep going. If you come with us, you'll have a chance to fight back." Hazel looked up at him, her eyes hollow with grief. "Fight!" Elijah nodded. "You want revenge, right? Well, these aliens, they don't just kill randomly. Your family wasn't just in the wrong place at the wrong time. There's a rebellion stirring, and those aliens, they're trying to snuff it out before it grows. Your parents might have been more involved than you knew. Revenge. The word echoed in Hazel's mind, drowning out everything else. It was the only thing she had left. Slowly, she nodded. "I'll come with you," without another word. Elijah helped her to her feet and led her to the ship, the rest of his crew watching in silence. As the ramp closed behind them and the engines roared to life, Hazel took one last look at the place she once called home. Her family was dead. Her life, as she knew it, was over. But she wasn't. Not yet. And the aliens would pay for their mistake. Hazel sat in the dimly lit cockpit of the Tempest, watching as the stars outside blurred into streaks of light. Hyperspace always gave her a strange sense of disorientation, like she was drifting through some unreal in-between space. But no matter how far or fast they traveled, one thing remained constant. The weight of her mission, the desire for vengeance, had burrowed deep into her chest, burning hotter with every passing day. In the weeks since her rescue, Elijah and his mercenary crew had trained her relentlessly. From combat drills to starship piloting, they pushed her to her limits and beyond, ensuring she had every tool needed to fight back. And Hazel welcomed the pain. Every bruise, every exhausting hour spent in the sparring room, reminded her that she still had a purpose. But now, they weren't just rogue mercenaries looking for odd jobs. The rebellion had found them, and Hazel's life was about to change once again. "We're coming up on the rendezvous point," Elijah's voice crackled through the intercom. Hazel snapped out of her thoughts and glanced over at him. He stood at the cockpit door, arms crossed, his usual tough demeanor softened by a trace of something more serious. "This meeting is important. These rebels, they knew your parents, and they've been waiting for you." Hazel stiffened. The mention of her parents still felt like a knife twisting in her gut. "Why me? I'm just one girl. What could they possibly want with me?" Elijah walked over and leaned against the wall, his expression unreadable. "Your parents weren't just random farmers on a backwater planet. They were leaders, organizing cells, gathering intel. The rebellion is scattered across the galaxy, and without figures like them, it's falling apart." He paused, studying her face carefully. "They need you to help unite them." Hazel frowned. The thought of stepping into her parents' shoes, of becoming some kind of leader, was almost laughable. She was only 15, but the rebellion didn't need her to be ready. They needed her because she was all they had. Moments later, the Tempest dropped out of hyperspace, and Hazel caught her first glimpse of the rebel fleet. Dozens of mismatched ships, freighters, repurposed civilian vessels, and a few battered military cruisers hovered in formation near a barren asteroid field. The ships were a patchwork of rusted hulls and makeshift repairs, a visual testament to the rebels' resourcefulness. They were the underdogs of the galaxy, fighting an empire with far more resources and firepower. As the mercenaries docked, Hazel felt her pulse quicken. She followed Elijah and the others through the airlock, her body tense with both anticipation and fear. The rebellion's leaders awaited them in the command center of the largest ship, a repurposed freighter named the Resolute. The room was full of tension and quiet murmurs as they entered. At the far end of the table, a tall woman with silver hair and sharp, calculating eyes stood. Hazel immediately recognized her from the stories her parents used to tell. Her name was General Orla Vayan, one of the rebellion's most strategic minds. "Welcome aboard," Orla said, her gaze falling directly on Hazel. "We've heard much about you, and your parents spoke highly of your potential." Hazel straightened, forcing down the nerves that threatened to spill over. "I'm not my parents," she said, her voice sharper than she intended. "But I'm here to fight." Orla nodded, her expression giving nothing away. "That's good, because we're losing ground. The alien empire is tightening its grip, and we need someone to rally the scattered cells. Your parents believed in unity, and now we need that more than ever." Hazel swallowed, unsure of what to say. The weight of her family's legacy was suddenly crushing. How could she possibly live up to what her parents had done? Sensing her hesitation, Elijah stepped forward. "Hazel's not just here to unite people with speeches. She's been training. She's ready to take on the aliens in more ways than one. Orla's eyes flickered to Elijah, then back to Hazel. I hope you're right, because we need action, not just hope. She tapped the holographic display in front of her, bringing up a map of the galaxy. Our next mission is critical. The alien empire relies on a network of communication relays to coordinate their fleets. We've identified a weak point, an unguarded relay station in the outer rim. Hazel's heart raced. This was it. Her first real mission with the rebellion. What do you need from me? She asked, her voice steady, despite the turmoil inside her. We need someone to lead the strike team, Orla replied. Infiltrate the relay station, disable their communications, and cripple their ability to respond to our next offensive. Hazel's breath caught. Led a team? The enormity of the task was overwhelming, but something inside her shifted. This was what she had been training for. The mercenaries had prepared her for this moment, and the rebellion needed her now, more than ever. I'll do it, she said, her voice firmer now. I'll lead the mission. The room fell silent for a moment before Orla nodded, a flicker of approval in her otherwise stern expression. Then let's prepare. As Hazel turned to leave, a mix of determination and uncertainty coursed through her. She had taken the first step, but she knew that this was only the beginning. The rebellion's survival and her own depended on the battles yet to come. Hazel crouched behind a stack of rusted crates, her pulse pounding in her ears. The alien communication relay loomed ahead, its towering spires crackling with energy as they fed crucial data across the Empire's military network. This was it, the weak point the rebellion had uncovered. If Hazel and her team succeeded, the Empire's fleets would be thrown into chaos. If they failed, there would be no second chance. Her team, a mix of hardened rebels and Elijah's mercenaries, waited for her signal. Their faces were tense but determined, eyes glinting with the same grim resolve Hazel felt boiling in her chest. The years of training, the months of preparation, all had led to this moment. She was no longer the scared girl hiding from invaders in the ruins of her home. She was a leader now, a symbol of the rebellion, and she had a mission to complete. Hazel glanced towards Sarah, the tech expert who had become one of her closest allies. Sarah gave a brief nod, her fingers dancing over the holographic tablet that controlled their access codes. Systems are ready to go, she whispered. We've got about 5 minutes to disable the relays before their backup security kicks in. Understood, Hazel whispered back, her throat tight with anticipation. She signaled to the rest of the squad, motioning for them to move forward. The strike team slipped silently through the shadows, skirting the base's perimeter and avoiding the patrol drones. Each step felt like a lifetime, the weight of the rebellion's hopes pressing down on them. They reached the base's entrance, a reinforced door glowing with the pale blue light of alien technology. Sarah quickly hacked the panel, and with a quiet hiss, the door slid open. Hazel motioned for the team to follow her inside, the darkness swallowing them whole. Inside, the base hummed with energy, the alien technology pulsing with a cold, mechanical rhythm. Hazel could feel the tension in her bones. Every muscle in her body coiled for action. They moved swiftly, navigating the narrow corridors toward the central control room, where the main relay tower was located. As they approached, Hazel's mind raced. Every moment brought them closer to either victory or disaster. She replayed Elijah's words in her head, the last conversation they'd had before she left for the mission. You're ready for this, he had said, his voice gruff but steady. You've got the skills, and you've got the fire. But remember, it's not just about taking down the aliens. It's about giving the galaxy something to fight for. You're more than just a weapon, Hazel. You're hope. She had nodded, the weight of his words settling over her. Hope. It was something she hadn't felt in a long time, not since the night her family was torn from her. But now, leading this team, she realized that Elijah was right. The rebellion needed more than a leader. They needed someone to believe in, and she was determined not to let them down. Suddenly, a blaring alarm ripped through the silence, echoing down the metal corridors. Hazel's heart lurched. They had been discovered. "Move!" she barked, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We need to reach the control room now." Her team sprang into action, weapons drawn as the sound of alien soldiers closing and echoed behind them. Hazel led the charge, her pulse quickening as they fought their way through the narrow hallways, blasting through the enemy forces. Each encounter was fiercer than the last, but Hazel's determination only grew. She couldn't afford to fail. The rebellion depended on her. They reached the control room, a sprawling chamber filled with glowing consoles, and the towering central relay. Sarah immediately began working on the relay's shutdown sequence, her hands moving with frantic precision as the countdown to security lockdown ticked down. But before they could finish, the door burst open, and an alien commander strode in, flanked by armored guards. Hazel recognized him instantly. He was the one who had led the massacre on her home planet. His cold, emotionless eyes locked onto her, and the memories of that horrific night flashed before her eyes. "You!" Hazel spat, her voice thick with rage. "You're the one." The alien commander's lips curled into a cruel smile. "And you're the child who survived. I should have finished you then." Hazel's grip tightened on her blaster, her anger bubbling to the surface. But even as fury surged through her, she knew she couldn't let it consume her. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about the rebellion, about the people depending on her. She dodged his first attack, moving swiftly as the battle erupted around her. Her team held off the guards, but Hazel had only one focus: the commander. They fought fiercely, their movements a blur of strikes and counterattacks, until Hazel finally disarmed him, knocking him to the ground. She stood over him, her blaster aimed at his head, her chest heaving with rage and exhaustion. She could end it now, avenge her family and rid the galaxy of one more monster. But something stopped her. Elijah's words echoed in her mind. "You're more than just a weapon, Hazel. You're hope." Slowly, she lowered her weapon, her voice steady but cold. "Killing you won't bring them back, but crippling your empire, that will." Sarah completed the shutdown sequence, just as Hazel turned away from the defeated commander. The relay went dark, and the entire base shuddered as the communications network collapsed. "Let's get out of here," Hazel said, her voice carrying the weight of a leader who had won a battle, but knew the war was far from over. As they escaped into the night, the rebellion's future seemed a little brighter. And Hazel, though scarred and weary, knew she had become the symbol of hope that the galaxy needed.